right, well, here is the day one severe weather outlook. I apologize, my graphics are a little bit different today. I'm away from my normal environment. Anyway, so the day one outlook is really confined to Texas and parts of New Mexico for the slight risk. The marginal risk extends all the way up to Wisconsin, actually. And this is sort of the idea here that we're just kind of getting into this severe weather mode. So things are building here. So the upper level winds are there but not quite there. The instability is there but not quite as meaty as it could be. So that's the zone we are in right now for today. This is Saturday, of course. This is the way the CSU, Colorado State University, looks at it. They actually put a tornado probability way up around Omaha, Sioux Falls, that area, but a very small 2% risk and very small risks of hail and winds. Most of those are not in Texas, actually, interestingly enough, but they are in the marginal risk as issued by the SPC. The Cape, this is unstable air. Just as kind of an overview, this is valid today at about 4 o'clock. Is actually most intense up in parts of Kansas, but there may not be a triggering mechanism up there to really get those storms going. And I'll show you the bulk wind here in a minute and tell you why supercells are going to be hard to come by. And then the instability down in Texas is forecast to be so-so. Now, this is something called bulk shear. I use a map that looks a lot like this a lot of times called 500 millibar flow. This is really just an idea, and it's a concept that works pretty well, is that you're looking for the difference in wind between the surface and this level. And it basically, that kind of profile allows thunderstorms to tilt in such a way that they don't choke themselves off. So, in other words, summertime thunderstorms usually just go straight up and come straight down. They produce maybe a brief burst of severe weather, but they are their own worst enemy because they collapse on themselves, and all the inflow that would have supported the storm disappears. When your shear starts to increase, and generally speaking, on this map at least, the bluish colors are an indication that we're on the edge of maybe supporting a supercell. So you see a little bit of that in Texas, a little bit of that in Kansas. So I don't know, a lot more of it up in Minnesota, but the instability is not there at all. So that's really the fight that we're up against here and will be for the next several days, as you'll see. Now, this is Sunday's outlook. It expands quite a bit. Texas, western Oklahoma, south central to central Kansas is under the slight risk. That sort of marginal risk still goes way up to Eau Claire and almost to Duluth. That's the darker green area. If we take a look at CSU's idea for that, they put a tornado risk over Lake Superior and the UP of Michigan, of all places. And they're also a lot more hot on the idea of hail up there as well, and maybe some wind. And the reasoning behind that is pretty simple. We have a little bit of a better bulk shear value up there. See, it gets into those purple ranges. Interestingly, the bulk shear from southern Missouri down to Texas is very favorable for supercells, but it doesn't quite line up with where the instability is forecast to be. There it is there, but maybe enough. So tomorrow is a kind of a interesting day. There's a balance here between unstable air and bulk shear. Both are just on the tip of being okay. And there's a dry line involved too, and it's not the most intense or sharp sort of thing. So synoptically, if we take a look at the big picture, in other words, where are the 500 millibar winds? Where are the surface lows? All that, they're not quite there yet. Okay, so if we take a look at the next day now, this is Monday, and I was kind of thinking this would happen. The SPC divided this into two slight risks area. That's the yellow up in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin, and down in Oklahoma and Texas. The one up north is connected to that surface low, and that's what's going to maybe make the winds a little more favorable. Again, it's always a question of how much unstable air will be up there. One can sometimes make up for the other, so weather forecasting is difficult. All right, and then down along the dry line, that's always a possibility. It just seems like that area is able to pull it off a lot of times. Now, again, the CSU, Colorado State University, puts a bullseye of tornado probabilities right there around La Crosse, Wisconsin, over to Madison, maybe. That's a 15%. I'm sorry, that's a 10% chance, with the brown being 5 and the green being 2. So, very intense area. That would be a chasing moment for me. I think that'd be a long way to travel, but probably worth it the way it looks now. The wind or the hail probabilities are in the upper right hand corner, pretty good in that exact same area, and for all practical purposes, the wind as well. Now, look what happens to the bulk shear on Monday. It's much better over Minnesota and Wisconsin. We get into those deeper blues, almost the purple color, purple pink almost. Whereas back in Kansas and Texas, yes, it's actually adequate enough. The instability down there would be good. The dry line sharpening up a little bit. You can tell by the way the instability, the cape here is drawn, very sharp gradients. So yes, you could go if you were a storm chaser. You could go all the way to Minnesota and Wisconsin, or you probably would take a gamble, hang back at the dry line. That would be a decision I'll have to make. Down there in Oklahoma, there's a little bulge there along the Red River. That would suffice. Again, this is all model data. Is it right? This many days out, the more days you go, the less confidence you have. Okay, now this is the severe weather outlook for Tuesday, from southern Wisconsin and Michigan all the way down to Texas. Once again, this has been pretty consistent. They've been widening that area on the north end of it, understandably, because I think that's where, again, surface low pressure is developing. The overall, this is not shear anymore. This is just 500 millibar flow, but you can infer pretty good shear. Now, this is a what's called a positively tilted trough. So the trough starts in the Dakotas and ends up in Southern California. That's kind of oriented a way that does support severe weather, but it doesn't really support organized low pressure at the surface very well. It can if there's a little short wave in there, and that's again this many days out, kind of hard to see, but that's a possibility. And then we go again. This is Wednesday's outlook, and it goes from Illinois through all of Missouri, all the way down to Texas again. This has been backed up and expanded as I've been watching this day to day. It was down in Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee just a few days ago. Now it's kind of backing up a little bit, and that's part of a trend, by the way, that goes on even beyond the 8 days that SPC looks at. This is what the 500 millibar flow looks like on Wednesday. Again, a broad zone of strong winds that are capable of supporting supercells, most likely in that area. But where will the instability go? Where will the boundaries be? This is going to be an interesting situation on Wednesday. I do want to make a comment at this point, and even the Storm Prediction Center sees this. If you look at the long range EPS forecast, that's what this is. You start to see that the basic flow out in the western U.S. is still a trough of low pressure. So this could extend into Thursday, Friday, and even into the following weekend. Now, this is, again, these are the last three graphics I'll show you. This is NIU's outlook, a percentage of supercell composites. So a supercell is the necessity, basically, for organized hail, wind, or tornadoes. So from Wisconsin down to West Texas for the next 7 days on average is looking pretty good. Even the following week after that, that's the 18th through the 24th, still roughly in the same place. And then finally, the last week, which goes all the way to May 1st, it had to be the 25th through May 1st, suppresses a little bit. Looks like some stable air on average, tries to make it down to the Great Plains, high pressure moving in, but still pretty active in Texas.